And we are live. All right, guys. Had a bit of a struggle setting this up. This is going to be a interesting live stream because I am in the middle of doing a setup on this Taylor 214 CE. So it's an orchestra model body with a cutaway. That's what the C and CE stands for, and the E is for the electronics. It's got onboard electronics right here. And this has some pretty gorgeous KOA. And if you guys are, as you guys are tuning in here, do me a favor and just write something in the comments. I've got my laptop behind me. I'll check it every once in a while. For one, I want you guys to do that so I can make sure you can hear me, you can see everything, and everything's going fine on the stream. Because I actually haven't done this over here at the bench before. It took a great effort of stringing wires together. And actually, if you could see the background of what's going on here, I've got wires kind of hanging all around my face right now. It's pretty annoying. You guys have no idea what goes into setting up a live stream. I had no idea until I started messing around with live streams. And honestly, it's a lot more techy than I would have hoped it would be and thought it would be. A lot of the things that you think would just kind of happen do not happen, and they require a lot of research and consideration. All right, so obviously I've already started work on this. I actually was just going to knock this out, and then I thought, let me try and actually do this. Let me do this as a live stream. So what I've already done, obviously I started clipping off the strings here. Because I already did the truss rod adjustment. So why don't we go ahead? I did the truss rod adjustment first. And why don't we talk about that first? So this guitar came in. There's really nothing big wrong with it. It just needs a simple setup. And especially after the absolutely brutal winter that we just had. I mean, we're still in it, but hopefully we're coming out of it. I don't know what the groundhog and Punxsutawney said, but I'm hopeful that we're not going to see much more of this crap going into March. But anyway, what I think a lot of people haven't realized, everyone's realized how brutal this winter has been on our driveways and everything else, and on our souls, but but on our guitars, it has been totally brutal. Me and luthiers all over the country have been getting all sorts of calls about issues to their guitars, even issues related, structural issues and splits in the sides and the wood, reacting to the dryness in the air in a big way. So this guitar in particular didn't have any splits or anything like that, thank God. But what it did have was the classic setup problems that you see towards the middle and end of winter where the neck has bowed. And there was a pretty serious bow in this. So I took it out with the truss rod. And this here is one of those truss rods that adjusts on the headstock end, which I often appreciate. It's a little easier to access. You can do it more easily with the strings still on. You can do sound hole adjustments with the strings still on. You just typically have to loosen up the D and the G string so that you have a little more room to work in there. But this just requires a 1/4-inch driver. And before I make my adjustments, I always like to take a Sharpie and just mark onto the washer and the adjustment nut, make a single mark that goes across the washer and the adjustment nut. And what that does is it references for me where this was in its starting position. So as I turn it, and maybe I turn it a couple of times, which is what I did here. As I turn it, I can actually look back at that mark on the nut and I can see how far it has progressed. So I know how much work I've done on that nut. You can't turn this forever. There's an end to the adjustment on your truss rod. Obviously, the threads only go so far. And so it behooves you to know how much you've turned this Even better if you could know how much the previous person turned it. So this is also kind of a favor to the next person who works on this. And I can tell by looking at this that I turned it about a half turn. And I did that in increments. I think I did 3 turns, a little bit less than a quarter of a turn each time. And I checked it until I was happy with it. Let me pause right there. I want to check out what you guys are saying, if anything at all, over here. AI spelling. Okay, Timothy Ziegler is in the chat. He says AI spelling. Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean, but that's fine. Let me know if you can hear me, Timothy, and if you can see everything that's going on. All right, so we're going to keep on going. I did my turn, and you know, this straightened out very nicely. I got it to 0.08 of an inch, reading at the 8th fret. So when I place a notch straight edge on here, I'm going to use the long scale here, 25.34 inch. And obviously, you want to do this with the strings attached and fully up to pitch, because right now I'm going to get a very different story from the straight edge. But with it tuned up to pitch at the 8th fret, I was reading 0.08 of an inch with a feeler gauge. And that's good. You want to be between, say, 5 and 10 thousandths of an inch. 5 and 10. Doesn't matter too much if you're closer to 5 or you're closer to 10. You just want to be somewhere in that range. And now we can work on the saddle. Because after I adjusted it, the other thing I noticed was simply that even with the neck straightened, it just felt a little high when I was playing bar chords and scales and things like that up here in the higher registers. So that's going to be a too high saddle. All right, let's pop out bridge pins. Guys, I have this in a crazy fisheye lens right now, which I honestly don't love. I tried to change it, and yet another technical issue. I couldn't. The GoPro app wouldn't allow me to change the fisheye lens. But you know, it does give us a broader scope view of the whole workbench here. So I actually think that's fairly helpful to have the fisheye lens. So we're going to try it for this first bench stream here. Maybe that's what I'll call these, bench streams. All right, so we'll pop all these out with our little plastic bridge pin remover. Let me say a couple other things about this guitar too. This guitar, I'm sure you guys who do more repairs than me, I used to do tons of repairs, but because the build classes, the hands-on workshops have really taken off, I don't take in as many repairs as I used to. And one thing that I didn't realize is that these guitars, these Taylors, don't have back braces. So I'm not sure exactly what they've done here, but I know that this is a laminate back. They call it layered, but you know, it says it's a layered KOA back. It looks gorgeous, but this is actually essentially KOA plywood. And, you know, they call it layered. Don't be fooled. That's a marketing thing. It means laminate, or in other words, plywood. But I guess they layer it up enough, and they don't need back braces. It also has a significant recurve, like an arch top. I don't know if you can see this on the camera. Maybe you can. Yeah, see that bulge right there in the middle? That is not your typical radius on a back. They're doing something a little bit different here. Okay, so we're going to pull out our saddle. The nut action, by the way, felt great. So I don't think I'm going to have to do anything with the nut. Pull out a sanding board. So at each of my benches here in the school, each student has a long sanding board like this, and these are very useful. It beats having to take a piece of sandpaper and stick it to the workbench or something like that. You always have this at the ready. You can just pull it out and sand a little bit off the bottom. And I'm sure for a lot of you experienced guys, this is this is everyday work for you. But all we have to do is sand the bottom of the saddle until we get to our desired saddle action. Okay. And remember, action is always a combination of three things. You've got your relief, which is what we touched on in the very beginning. You've got your nut action, and you've got your saddle action. All too common, guitar players or just bad guitar techs will address only one of those things without really diagnosing and identifying what the real problem is. And sometimes it's a combination of all three of those things. Here, it was basically the truss rod. I'm only adjusting this slightly as a favor to the customer because his saddle action out of the box when he bought this guitar was just a little high. All right, first give yourself some sort of reference. You can use a marking gauge, but I've taken to just simply using a pencil. And if you hold the pencil at kind of an angle like that, and then strike it across the bottom, you get a very consistent line right on the bottom. And so when I'm lowering the saddle, I think of it simply as how many of these lines do I need to remove? And you can measure this. I didn't do that here. You can measure your action at the 12th fret and determine how far you need to go, and then remove twice as much at the saddle, and that'll get you exactly where you need to be. Let me repeat that because it's a very simple formula. I'm going to explain that right now. So at the 12th fret, let's say you measure, let's just use an example. Let's say you have 100,000ths of an inch as measured off of the 12th fret between the bottom of your string and the top of the fret. And of course, you can measure that on the bass side and the treble side. Let's keep it simple. We're just measuring at the bass side. We have 100,000ths of an inch, and we want to be, let's say in this case, at 90,000ths of an inch. Keeps the math simple. So we want to come down 10,000ths of an inch at the 12th fret. That means at the saddle, we need to remove 20,000ths of an inch. And I didn't measure that here. Sometimes I just like to do a sort of a quick and dirty setup, and that's what we're doing here. So I just eyeballed it. I played it, and I have a lot of experience lowering these, so I figure I'm just going to take off 2 of these lines and then put it back in and check it. We'll bring this down. I also noticed, and this is very common, it was higher on the treble side than on the bass side. So at some point here, I'm going to tilt. I'm going to put a little extra pressure on the treble side just so that I can fudge in a little bit of lower action at the treble. All right, you guys hearing me? How's it going out there? Greetings from California. Timothy says, yes, sir. All right, that is good news. You know what bugs the hell out of me? This is such a difficult live stream here because for whatever reason, GoPro doesn't, I'm using a GoPro camera, and GoPro, when you hook it up for this live streaming mode they call GoPro webcam, for whatever reason, it will not record audio off the GoPro. So I have to have a separate mic, which I have right over here. And I've got a long wire strung out to my PC over there. And it's just, again, it's the reason why I have all these wires hanging all over me. I'd much prefer to be able to just speak into the GoPro, which is literally right in front of my face. So if the audio isn't quite right and it sounds a little distant, I'm going to have to figure that out. It should be a simple matter of recording right off the GoPro, which again is right in front of my face. But thank you, GoPro. They do not make that easy or even possible, it seems. All right, so yeah, I still got a little bit of a line there. So I'm going to sand a little further. Looks like this has nickel silver frets. I would say medium. Those look like medium gauge frets. Yeah, those are mediums. A little bit more. And obviously, if you're real unsure about this, you haven't done a lot of setups, I would pause and put the saddle back in and check it. Then take it out again and do more. And you can do that as many times as you feel comfortable. But to save time, once you get used to this, you can pretty easily judge how far you need to go and then just go for it without going too far. Okay. A bit more. Alrighty. Okay, I'm going to strike that second line on there. And this time, so the line is not only, doesn't only give you an amount, one sort of pencil thickness, but also it tells you whether or not you're skewing off of that straight line, like whether or not you're putting too much pressure on one side as opposed to the other. And so now for this second sanding here, I'm going to use the line to intentionally skew it and put a little bit of extra pressure onto the saddle side. And I'll know that I've done it because after I'm done, I'll look at this and I should still see some black line over here, but no black line on that side. Again, quick and dirty saddle adjustments. Very crucial skill, especially if you care about your time, which you should, but also if you're the kind of guitar tech who's, working with active musicians who just need a quick and dirty setup before a show. And maybe you're, on the road. A lot of bands will have some guy, maybe it's their roadie, who can do this stuff real quick and dirty on the road for them. Okay. Stu Mac makes that silly, what is it called? You guys in the chat could tell me. And maybe you don't think it's silly. Maybe you have it. Maybe you love it. But it's like a little roller that you put the saddle in. Like it's got bearings on the side, so it drives like a little car. And you put the saddle in and you roll it across your sandpaper, and that keeps your saddle straight up and down, square. I think, man, that thing is, and I think pretty universally, like working luthiers laugh at that one because you can do this by hand so easily without tilting from side to side in any way that matters. That to me, it really is just a way to, sell another tool. And don't get me wrong, I love Stu Mac. We need those guys. because they're almost the only game in town right now, at least as far as big manufacturers and suppliers of guitar parts and tools and things like that. Okay. Now, before I put this back in, I always just knock, just take like 2 little passes off of the edge to soften that edge so that when I put it back in, it doesn't have a hard 90-degree edge, which tends to get caught up on things, even if there's just like a little piece of dust or a piece of wood that fell into the saddle slot, and it's kind of smushed into that corner. And we're talking on like a microscopic scale. It's not going to push your saddle up slightly if you just, again, just kiss those edges with the sandpaper when you're done. All right, let's get this back in there. Let's see, did I put that in the right way? Yes. No, it's backwards. All right, now I can go ahead. Let's put this away and string it up with some new strings. So this guy was playing a set of 13s, which is a very heavy gauge. Maybe not very heavy. 14s would be a super duper heavy gauge. 13s are on the heavy side. They're considered medium, but in the world of guitar strings, medium means heavy, light means medium, and extra light means light. You guys who know what I'm talking about. All right, let's check out the chat. Audio sounds great. Hey, it's Carl. What's going on, Carl? So Carl is coming here to the shop for one of my classes in mid-March. Ain't that right, Carl? And so let me find a pack of strings. There we go. These are Diodarios. Phosphor bronze. I like these strings. What do you guys use for guitar strings? Genuinely asking here because I kind of settled on Diodarios a long time ago. And honestly, I just haven't switched it up in so long that, things have changed. And honestly, I don't even know what's out there anymore in terms of new string technology and new brands and things like that. So, oh, here's a little tip, guys. I should talk about this. You saw me just bend this before I install it. A lot of you guys are probably just taking it like this and putting the ball end of the string in there. And that's fine. Totally fine. Doesn't hurt anything to do that. But you know how when you first string up a guitar and you're playing that first song or two and it just keeps down tuning. And of course you can pull on and stretch your strings to speed up that process. But another thing you can do to speed up that process pretty significantly is just to put this little bend right there. That's about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter up from the ball end. It's just past those, those excess windings right there. And what that does is it speeds up that string stretch process because eventually your string wants to do this. Eventually it's going to do that once it's strung up long enough for, let's say a day or two, or maybe just a couple hours, it'll get that kink in it. So you're significantly speeding up that process by doing it for the guitar. And so I always string up the bass strings different with a different string tie than the treble strings. You don't have to. If you have a way of stringing up your guitar that you really like and it works for you, that's great. But if I tie the bass strings the same way that I tie the treble strings, there will be a like a messy rat's nest of excess string wound around the post on the bass strings just because they're so much thicker. And I can do a cleaner, it'll look cleaner, and it'll also, you know, if you have a poorly dressed string at the post, it's going to over time want to dress itself. So similar to what I did here at this end to speed up that string stretch period, I can also speed it up by tying this in the way I'm about to show you. Okay, so I take my string and I pull it to the post that I intend to use. And then I'm going to give myself a little bit of slack. So doing this, just spanning out my 4 fingers like this at about the midpoint of the string's range, that gives me a nice reliable amount of excess that just kind of works every time. So again, I do that. And now I'm holding the string down here at this end, and I'm going to cut it right there. Oh, no, I just dropped it when I went to pick up my clippers. There we go. And now I cut it. There we go. Turn this. Place it through there. And I'm just going to take my thumb and push that little nub. Just give it a nice sharp kink. And then sharply kink it on the other side, forming a Z going through the tuner post. And now I get in this winding position here. This is to help the string dress tightly around the post. I've got my index finger is going to guide the string around the post. And then these 2 fingers back here are just gently maintaining tension. So it dresses nicely, because if I don't maintain tension, it's going to dress loosely. Okay, so just like that. And now the whole thing is just, sorry, I'm trying not to block the camera with my elbow. Now the whole thing is just passing the string over the nub for the first pass, and then guiding it under the nub for all the other passes. And where the hell is my string winder? There she is. All right, ain't nobody got time for that. Let's use the string winder. All right, there we go. First string on. What's going on in the chat? Dimzay is asking, does it have a regular X bracing or a new C bracing? I think he means V bracing, unless, again, I'm not totally up to date on everything Taylor does minute by minute, but I don't think they have a C bracing. He's talking about their new, it's probably maybe like 8 years old at this point. Their new V bracing, might be more than that, it might be over a decade old when that V bracing came out. But I can see even from here that it's an X. And let me get a mirror for a second. Here we go. I just want to see if there's anything out of the ordinary down here. Nope. Yeah, that's just an X brace. Nothing special about that. Let's see. Davatron writes, I got a Taylor 110 from 2010. I modified the brace and enlarged the sound hole a little bit. I'm using 13s, 13 gauge strings. Sounds very great for bluegrass. It's got twice the bass. Okay, cool. So he uses 13s, and that makes sense. Bluegrassers love a good high tension string. the string's going to project more. It's going to be more stable. As a bluegrasser, you're not really bending the strings, or at least not much anyway. You just want to be able to hard pick aggressively and get a lot of oomph from it. So that's what you get from 12s. That's Davatron. That's pretty ballsy move there to enlarge the sound hole. And what did you do to a brace? Let me check it again. And you modified what? So yeah, if you could, while I'm working here, let us all know what you mean by you modified the brace. Like what brace? The tone bars? I know a lot of guys go in there and they reduce the tone bars. And I'd be curious to know too, did you take the top off to do this, or which is serious, serious work, or did you just reach in there with a finger plane or something like that? Let us know. All right, where are my strings? It's the A string. Diodaria has this nice color coding on the ball ends to make this a little easier for us. So again, I give it that bend to help with the string stretch. Go here, give it that extra slack, cut the string. Set the post about 90 to the fretboard, just to make this easier. And then bend that without pricking my thumb. And now we're gonna do the first pass goes over the nub and all the other passes go under. So the reason this works is because these strings have windings, okay? You cannot do this kind of tie on a plain steel string like the treble E or the B string, because it won't be able to grip. The reason this works is because of friction. The string is not actually tied in any real way. With the plain steel strings, we're going to actually do a tie. There's going to be a bite. In the knot world, they call it a bite around the main portion of the string, forming a very simple, the simplest really, knot. Okay? But this is not a knot. This is friction. Again, you don't have to do this even with the wound strings. It's just a little nicer. I mean, you can see how tight that is, how tight those windings are, and just how clean this looks. There isn't a big rat's nest on there. Looks better and helps with, you know, the settling in of the string. Got my pink Red Bull over here. Really gotta stop drinking this stuff. I usually don't, actually. This week, though, has been, last 2 weeks, if I'm honest, has been rough. And so I've been hitting the Red Bulls pretty hard. Okay. So we'll cut that. And I'm going to check in on, I think his name was Dabatron. I'm going to check in on him in a second here. See if he's still in there, if he answered our question. All right, first winding goes over, the rest go under. My index finger is guiding the string, and I'm gently maintaining tension. Look at this right here. I got these frickin' ladybugs So this is the new shop. So a lot of new surprises here. These ladybugs are everywhere in this place. This is a dead one, but there's live ones all over the place too. And they kind of smell. It's like a stink bug. Ugh. Nasty little guys. I guess it's not the worst infestation you can have, but I don't know. All right, Davatron. Let's see if he. Oh, here we go. Let me make this bigger for myself. Tried to scallop them. Okay, so he's talking about so scalloping you typically do to the X brace, the lower X brace arms, and sometimes the tone bars too. He says Taylor is a great guitar. I never tried a bad one so far. I agree with that. Taylor, I mean, there are guitars that I like more than Taylor. I'm not saying, Taylors are the best. I don't really think that. They might be the best for the money, though. But the thing with Taylor, the thing that they're really good at is their consistency. Taylors, to me at least, always sound like Taylors, like they sound the same from model to model, you know? There are different models have obviously different sound signatures, but if you get one Taylor 214 CE, which is what we have here, it's, in my mind, it's going to sound like a Taylor 214 CE. And you don't get that a lot in the acoustic guitar world. As many of you know, there's often a lot of surprises there. Just from one guitar to the next, you can have one Martin that sounds incredible, and then one that is kind of a dud. And I guess you can have that with Taylor too, but it just seems to be less of a delta there. Okay. Now, the G string is wound, of course. In some cases, especially on electric guitars, you can have an unwound G string. This one, I would say you can treat this either way. You can do the friction hold that I did on these other three strings, or you can include this with the plain steel ones and just do a tie. I always just tie this one. It will hold up as a friction hold because it does have those windings, even though they're very small windings. But it also dresses just fine if you tie it because it's so thin. So I always just tie it. Honestly, it's one of those things where you can do it either way, and it's just easier sort of mentally when you're running through this real quick to just remember, okay, the top three strings, the three bass strings, you do one way, and the treble strings, you do a different way. So let me talk about what I'm doing now for the tie, because we're going to tie this one. So before I brought it to the post, gave it that amount, and then clipped it. Now I'm going to pass the uncut full length of the string. Not the full length, but I'm not going to pre-cut it is what I'm saying. I'm going to pass the string through like that. And how far do I pass it through? I pass it through until I get about that same amount. This is just a reliable way of, leaving yourself an appropriate amount of slack. That's the same every time. And now I'm going to kink the string. Let me move the guitar over so perhaps you can see a little bit better. I sharply bent the string up towards the top of the headstock, wrap it around and under the main portion of the string, and then back over itself. And there's your bite. So that's what I mean when I say in the knot world, they call that a bite. It's just a simple kink around the main portion of the string. And now all the windings just go down. But yeah, I didn't mean to turn this into a master class on tying your strings. Most of you guys are probably pretty good with that, but sometimes there's some little tips there you can pick up. Okay. And then, man, don't be that guy at the open mic who just leaves all his string ends hanging out like this. That always bothers the hell out of me. Just clip them. I always just rest the clippers right on top of the tuner post. Gives you a nice consistent amount every time rather than kind of randomly clipping them. You certainly don't want to clip them in too close to the knot because, you know, it might just slip right through, right? So clipping it off the top of the tuner post gives you just the right amount. So there's enough sticking out so it won't slip through. And also there's enough sticking out so that you can occasionally accidentally prick yourself and bleed a little bit. And that way, you know, you know you're alive, right? Let's check up on the chat. We got lots of people. Okay. Monkeys writes, just moved. Hold on. Where'd you go, monkeys? Hold on. I want to read what monkeys says. Friends don't let friends tie strings. Yes, that's right. And that's because we don't trust our friends. All right, Taylor, great. I also put a bone saddle. Very good. That is certainly an improvement. This is not a bone saddle. I should have mentioned that. This is, what is this? Is it plastic? This is a high-end guitar for a Taylor, not, you know, high-end. I think this is like a $1,500 guitar. So it really should have a bone saddle. But that's not bone. There's no way it's plastic. I think it is. I'm going to look that up in a little bit. You guys look that up. Yeah. Because I'm busy. I'm working. Look this up. What on a Taylor 214 CE, specifically if you can, because they have a couple different models with different appointments, and the higher end one that I saw has the KOA back and sides. So look up the Taylor 214 CE with the KOA back and sides, and let me know. I know it's not bone, so but let me know what they say they use for the nut, because this just seems like straight up plastic to me. There's a couple different synthetic materials that a lot of manufacturers use that are definitely better than plastic. And I'm hoping that's what this is. Let's see. My dad had that model, but regular fake rosewood. So I guess he means laminate rosewood. Those are made in Mexico, but are still good. Yeah, maybe this model is, I'm confusing it with a different higher end one, but I thought that this was a high end thing. Do the ones made in Mexico cost $1,500? I know that's not how Martin works, but maybe that's how Taylor works. How do you know the ball end is seated against the bridge plate? Ronnie Lopez. Well, you don't quite know that. But for one thing, when you put it in there, you want to orient. Whereas, here we go. I'm just looking for a scrap of string here. Actually, you see this? So these were the old strings that I cut off. You see how the ball end is twisted that way just a little bit? It's facing that way. You actually want the ball end to be, I'm going to see if I can fix this, to be in line with the rest of the string like that, okay? Because it will seat better, right? You want the longer axis of the ball end to rest against that maple bridge plate, because if it turns like this, it more easily falls into the notch that's in the bridge pin, or even into the hole. Not that it'll come out completely. People do this all the time. They just put their strings on. However, most guitar players just kind of throw their strings on, and that's fine. But we're talking about, being optimal here. You will get a better reference against the bridge plate if, when you install these, you always bend. Remember, I showed you how to make that little bend. You bend it, keeping in mind to have the ball end oriented with the length of the string like that. Put another way, just to rephrase that another way. In the end, when all of the ball ends are in there, you should be able to, in theory, take a string and pass it through all of the ball ends going that way, right? Not that you have to do that, obviously. Oh, but to answer your question, where did I put that? Hold on, guys. I lost my tool. Here we go. This is a helpful thing to have. Now, there are a couple of reasons why the ball end of the string wouldn't butt up against the maple plate. But what you can do is bring the strings to tension and then pass a mirror in there, a little automotive inspection mirror. You can get these at AutoZone or Advance Auto. Place that in there, and honestly, simple thing, but you can just see for yourself if they're all butt up against it. So a couple reasons why that might happen. One, maybe the ramps in the bridge weren't cut correctly or cut at all, and so the string's kind of bound up in there. Now, it's not something you have to really think about or worry about. Typically, again, if you trust the maker of the guitar, I don't go in there and check out the ball ends of the strings. I just string it up, and as it comes to pitch, it's going to pull itself up against that bridge plate, right? So certainly right now, it's not at pitch. Checking the ball ends of the string, it's meaningless. They don't need to be up against the bridge plate when it's not at tension. That doesn't matter. If you want to check it at all, you would check it after you tune it up. All right, back to the chat. Chuck 33Z, Doyle Dykes method for removing leftover string for me. I have no idea what you're saying or who Doyle Dyke is. Only the expensive model up to 500, it has bone. Okay, 500, saying up to $500. So above 500, they give you a bone nut and saddle. I'm assuming that's what he's saying. But what I have here is definitely not bone. But I might just be mistaken on what model this guitar exactly is. Install zero glide nuts. I don't even think it's real KOA. Yeah, it's a laminate. Only for the top. Okay, Carl Mills says Graphtec new bone nut. Okay, so it's yet another, made up nonsense fake bone thing, like, Tusk, TUSQ. Of course, they got to give it a name that invokes the real thing, which is bone. Same with Tusk. They're almost trying to confuse you that it's TUSK when really it's some synthetic. I'm not against these synthetics. It's the wordplay that is somewhat comical to me. So this is something called New Bone. Doesn't seem at all like bone to me. Okay, Dabatron says the first number means the quality. Okay, thank you, Dabatron, for helping me out with that. So he's talking about their serial numbers. All of these companies have a way of sort of coding that's built into their serial numbers. And so if you're very familiar with it, you know at a glance when you're reading a serial number what everything means, which is why in the beginning I told you that the C is for cutaway and the CE, the E is for the electronics. They're just telling you that those things are included. All right, let's get the rest of these strings on here. I'm chatting too much. So now we got the plain steel strings. So what do you guys like as far as strings? Let's start there. What do you guys use? And is your preference strong? Do you have a strong preference for what you use? Or is it just kind of what you've always used? I got this new light here, which you can't see, it's off camera, but it is amazing. It's this Laguna. Here, I'll bring it in. Look at this thing. And I can actually adjust the color tone on it, which is more important for what I do with the camera work. Not so much if I was just building guitars, I wouldn't really care what the color temperature is of the light. All right, so once again, we're not going to pre-cut this one because it's a plain steel string. I'm going to pass that through, give it that amount. Then I'm going to sharply kink it, wrap it around under the main portion of the string and back over it, forming a bite. And then wind it up. And all of the windings just go down in this case. All right, and let's see. Well, let me get these two strings on before I check the chat. You guys are all right over there. You can talk amongst yourselves. All right, the treble E is going in. Where's my bridge pen? You know, I have all these parts trays that I use, but they don't work when I don't use them. I lose my parts. There it is. It's hiding under the guitar. Yeah, I tend to do that. I tend to like invest in all the right, tools and different things like parts trays and stuff like that as to help you stay organized in your work. And then I just forget to actually use them. I definitely follow the woodworker's rule or the janky woodworker's rule of the best tool for the job is the one that's closest to you. And so what that means is, if you need a hammer and these clippers are nearby, I'll grab the clippers and just tap something in with that. Not literally that example, but I tend to do things like that sometimes, which just goes to show you, you don't need it. All the tools to do this kind of work. A lot of the tools are very redundant. And once you have them, you end up not using them as much as you thought you would anyway. Okay. You know what I got to do? I got to figure out set up here where I can have my computer right in front of me, so I can talk to you guys that way instead of running back and forth. But you know, it is what it is. All right, so we got our strings on there. In the chat here, we've got yeah, I knew what you meant, Datatron. So he's saying the 214 is the second line of quality that they have. So like the 110, which was mentioned earlier, would be in that first, as far as a hierarchy of quality, that would be at the bottom. John Pierce Silk and Bronze, or GHS Vintage Bronze. That's what Chuck uses. Great for finger pickers. Okay. And String Joy Bronze is what Gary Van Remortel uses. All right, so first thing we're going to do is just see where we're at. Again, the first thing we did, which it was off camera, it was before I decided to turn this thing on, was the relief. I turned the truss rod. That was the main problem with this guitar. Once you have the relief set, then you can turn your attention to the saddle action and the nut action. And you kind of work those, consider those at the same time, meaning you can play the guitar, and if your action feels stiff when you're playing cowboy chords, you know, your open chords, that's going to be a nut action problem. But if your action feels stiff when you're playing bar chords and just, you know, noodling further up the fret, say past the midpoint, that's going to be your saddle action, more or less, right? If one or the other is totally jacked up beyond belief, it's going to feel pretty bad on both ends. But generally speaking, that's not the case. And if it was, you would notice it and probably be able to address it easily. Let's see, where's my tuner? Now, I like to use Peterson strobe tuner for when I'm done, when I'm really dialing things in. But I do always keep these little cheapo clip-on tuners handy. And I use them more often just to get it, you know, quick and dirty strung up. Like I'm not doing intonation work or anything like that. In which case, that's where I would use my strobe tuner. Not that you need to have both types, but I teach classes here, guitar making classes, and I prefer for all the students to have these clip-ons to be able to work quickly and just get it roughly up to pitch, rather than focusing too hard on the precision of the pitch for stuff like this, if that makes sense. So, you know, if you're just stringing it up to check the setup, it doesn't need to be perfectly in tune. We're just trying to simulate the proper tension. I guess what I'm saying is if I give everyone a strobe tuner, they take way too long to tune up their guitars. You know what I mean? All right. This thing had a battery. No, it's good. And you know what I should have done? I should have cleaned up. I always like to just kind of wipe down the guitar and sometimes even oil the fretboard before I'm done. And I could have done that before I strung this back up. I was just assuming that I'd be, you know, loosening these up again to take the saddle out again. But honestly, I might not have to. So either way, I'll have to loosen it up just to kind of clean it up a little bit. All right, where was I? Kind of stretching these out a little bit. So these are brand spanking new strings. So we want to stretch them. And I don't know if can you guys see me? I think you can see me. Here I am. Hey guys. So I'm just going to each string and giving it a gentle pull like that. What I'm not doing is grabbing the string in the middle and kind of yarding on it. I'm massaging the string along its whole length like that, just kind of bouncing. That way I don't put a kink in the string. And this is to simulate, you know, a couple hours of playing and to break that string in. And then, of course, that's going to drop all the notes, so you have to retune it. Ease a little off. There we go. You know, I'm going to ask you guys a little question. It's kind of like a quiz, but also it's a poll in the sense that there isn't really a right answer, but there is an answer that I think is right that I'm curious to see what you guys would say. Is there a particular string when you're working on a guitar that gives you more trouble in terms of intonation and in terms of action adjustments with buzzing and things like that? Is there one particular string that causes more problems than the other ones? Let me know in the chat, and you know, let me know what types of problems you're having. And I know what my answer is and what is probably your answer as well. All right, so we're tuned up. And let's take a look now that we're at pitch. I'm going to show you guys, we're going to take a look at the full setup on this. Okay, I don't have a camera that we can zoom in with, but what I mean is I'm going to pull out the tools that I use to look at this board and to diagnose it. So we're going to start with the relief, which again we did at the beginning, and it should still be good. But hey, towards the end of this, of a setup, you always want to just check it again, because when you turn that truss rod, the neck might still be moving. Usually the movements of the neck from the truss rod happen instantly or nearly instantly, but sometimes that the wood will kind of still be moving over the course of 30 minutes or so. So it's always good to just double check that, because hey, maybe now it's moved too far into a back bow. And of course, you always check at pitch, otherwise you're not getting an accurate read. So I've got, really like having this feeler gauge nearby. I always keep it just hanging next to me on the workbench, because this feeler gauge, this particular one, has two different gauges on it. On the very tip, it's 7/1000ths of an inch, and the rest of the feeler gauge, the main body of it, is 9/1000ths of an inch. So that's kind of right in the middle of that 5 to 10 range that I like. So with this, I can kind of see whether or not the very tip fits in the gap, or the larger part of it. It kind of gives me all of my, not all of, but it's easy to quick and dirty sight in about where you're at if you have a set of feeler gauges like this, and then you can just take the 7 and 9 piece of feeler gauge off of the set and just hang it on your wall. Real easy to grab, and again, quick and dirty. Just see if you're at least close to being in that pocket of where you want to be. Okay, so 8th fret, and actually, yeah, this is now probably, so it has continued to move slightly, because now I can't fit the very tip of this anymore. It seems like it just barely wants to go in, but it won't go in. So we're probably at maybe, I would guess, 5/1000ths of an inch, which is right, at the edge of that range. But hey, just to be sure, I'm going to back that off just a hair, the smallest amount, to be sure that I'm not too flat, right? So if you're less than 5/1000ths of an inch on an acoustic guitar, you're probably too flat. Okay. All right. Nothing new in the chat. Good. We'll keep working here. So let's take quarter inch. And so righty tighty is going to, you turn this to the right. That would be counterclockwise. That is going to move the neck into a back bow. You can always think of it as string tension is pulling the neck forward. It's as if you're tight, righty tighty. It's as if you're tightening it against string tension. Okay. If you're loosening it, lefty loosey, you're allowing the neck to be pulled forward by string tension. That's actually not exactly what's happening, but it's a way of being able to remember righty tighty, lefty loosey. Okay. I'm tightening it against string tension, or I'm loosening it and allowing the strings to pull it forward. All right. So this time, what we're doing is we are loosening it. And I'm sorry, I said I said that backwards. Righty tighty is clockwise. not counterclockwise. So right now, I'm loosening that just a hair. And that's it. So that was probably an 1/8 of a turn. And you know, one thing you can do, you got to be real gentle with this, is when you adjust this, you can actually very gently ease the neck like this. I don't want some bull in a china shop guy to see what I'm doing here and think that I'm pushing on this. This is super gentle, and it just kind of helps ease it forward. It'll move to where it's supposed to move eventually, but you're just kind of speeding up that process so that, you know, the neck doesn't slowly move over the course of 20 minutes. Okay. And then we can check it. Yeah, we'll put it up here. And let's see where we're at. Yep, there we go. I am right at, that actually moved a little bit more than I expected. I'm right at 9 thousandths of an inch. Now, I'm splitting hairs here, going back and forth. I just turned that the tiniest amount, and I'm not gonna touch that again. I'm not even gonna check it again because I just eased it the tiniest amount. So that'll get us at 8 thousandths of an inch. Maybe I'll check it at the very end here after I kind of clean everything up. Okay, so that's it. If you guys have any more questions, I know we didn't. Here, we could check the intonation right now, but this is an acoustic guitar. You don't typically do intonation work unless, you know, the customer needs it. There's a specific intonation issue. On an electric guitar, intonation would naturally just be a part of the setup because you can just, you know, move those intonation points very easily. It's a bit trickier. I did a whole massive video of deep dive on setting optimal intonation on the saddle. What was that video called? I mean, if you look in my backlog of videos, you'll see it. It's it was only like 4 or 5 videos ago, and it's about saddle compensation. Okay. Let's see if you guys, no more questions. All right, I do think we're going to wrap this up here. I'm not going to bore you with checking the intonation, actually, because that'll just be me plucking strings and nodding in approval. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I don't know if I'm going to do this more with the live streams over the bench. I think I will, because this worked out well, barring all the technical difficulties. Yeah, I think I'll try this again. We're still going to do the Q&As regularly on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock. Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Tuesday, 11 a.m. These will just be sprinkled in throughout wherever whenever I want to do it and find time. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm signing off. Bye for now.